through us. We try to live for Him. We try to do the things that we know and believe that He wants us to do. And when you do that, you leave Him out. And you live your life on your own. You're doing everything on your own. And you believe that everything is your responsibility. You know that is a weight. This is why he says this was a weight that you were not ever meant to carry. You're not meant to carry all the responsibilities of this life. But yet we do. We carry it all as believers. This is why we carry anxiety, and we carry fear, and we carry worry. This is why church people or Christians are have just as many problems with sleeping at night as the world has. And we shouldn't have. Not one believer should be on any kind of medicine. Any kind of medicine. Why? And we'll get into that in a minute. But we are. These guys were scared. And they shouldn't have been. How many are with me that they should not have been scared? No matter how big the waves were, they should not have been scared. And it's easy when you're on the land like we are and looking into the lives of these people. It's easy for us to have that attitude. When most of us, when our environments are shaken, we're just like them. We react just like them. We act just like them. We feel just like them. We feel hopeless and worthless. And these guys have gone into this circumstance. They're doing the rowing. They're about halfway out. They're halfway from where they were to where they want to go when their environment was completely shaken up. Now they're scared. Now these guys, you can tell that their attitude in this circumstances, the reason that they were afraid lets us know what their attitude was. They did not have Jesus when they went in it. They were on their own. They went out and they were rowing and they were in the circumstances on their own. They made all the decisions. They did it on their own. They're in this place on their own. And now they're in a place they don't know what to do. The wind's completely against them. It's washing over. It's going to sink them. Now what I do? I done got here on my own. I done did this on my own. I've made all my own decisions. Now I'm in trouble. I'm in a place now where I have no control over this. What do you do when you've done all that you can do and you know and you realize, I got nothing else I can do? And what are they doing now? They're looking for Jesus. Well, when these guys look at Jesus, they look back and they go, He's asleep. We learned last week that either he don't know, don't care, or can't do anything about it anyway. And this is the attitude that people have when they believe that they're living their life on their own, and they do live their life on their own. And the only thing Jesus is their get out of hell free card. Most of us most Christians, the only thing Jesus is to get out of hell free. We do not let Him live our lives for us. Most people's job that they worked, Jesus was nowhere near. He was not sought after. You didn't go to your knees and pray before you ever went and got that job. And now a lot of us are working on Sunday, working on Wednesdays. I got people right now that can't come to church. Why? Because their employer makes them work on Sunday. They didn't have to before they joined the church or started going to church. They didn't have to worry about Sundays or Wednesdays. As soon as they gave their life to Christ, now everything in the world is keeping them out of church. I know people right now that, man, when they were struggling or when everything they didn't have, they wasn't being blessed, and It's amazing that people that ain't blessed and they're struggling, they're on their knees every day. They're in that prayer closet seeking God, seeking God. As soon as they get that job, as soon as they get that relationship that they've been looking for and they've been praying about, and they were at church every week. They were on time every Wednesday, every Sunday, faithful to God. Coming to the prayer meetings. Maybe not talking about this place, but I mean, I've been in church all my life, and I've been in a lot of church. They see this. As soon as God blesses, as soon as they get that job, as soon as they get that relationship, they start being late for church. They no longer can they're no longer at the prayer meetings on Monday nights. And eventually the job makes them work on a Wednesday night. Just this one, because they complain about it a little bit, but then they're working every Wednesday because it's more money. They work on Sunday, that's more money. They get Sunday pay, weekend pay, and then they're out of church. They get that relationship they want, now they're out of church. I done lost my train of thought there. That was good stuff, though. But Jesus is in the back of the boat. He's asleep. He don't care. Now, if you're living the way that Jesus wanted you to live, where you let Him live through you, when you take Him in, and He is a vital part. See, people who are consumed with Christ, and He is everything to them, they don't make a move without Him. They don't do anything without Him. They're Jesus freaks. Before they take any job application, they pray, seek God. And they're absolutely animate. Absolutely animate. Before they ever take the job, and there's total understanding, I will not work during church. I will not work on Sunday. I will not work on a Wednesday. And if the employer decides to try to make them work, they quit. I'm not doing it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you'll stand up for God, He'll stand up for you. If you stand up for Him, He'll stand up for you. You know that there was a time when the church controlled everything? The people of God controlled everything. They controlled Hollywood. They controlled the music industry. You know that y'all got your Generation X people. You older people like me, remember the I Dream of Jeannie? You remember? You know that she had that Jeannie outfit and she had to wear a thing up here. You know why? Because the church said she can't show that belly button. It's too sexual. It's too sensual. The church said no belly button. Guess who didn't show a belly button on TV? What was her name? Linda? There was a young man that hit the music scene in the 70s, 60s and 70s. Nobody had ever seen nothing like this guy. It ain't nothing but glorified rock, country music now. But back then it was rock and roll. And he did that. I ain't going to do it. But anyway, Elvis Presley. They on television, they couldn't show him, but from the waist up. Why? Because the church said it's too sensitive. I was shaking his booty and all. And can't do that on television. We stand up. The church stood up for God. They made a stand. They were uncompromising in their faith. And because of that, the church controlled everything. Nothing happened on Sunday. It was church. Nothing happened on Wednesday. It was church. Little by little, we stopped standing, somewhere along the lines, we stopped standing up for God. When my boy was born and my girl was born and we started doing the sports stuff, I told my wife, you watch, eventually. Because nobody stands up for God anymore. I did. Not patting myself on the back. I loved my God. I loved Him more than anything. And I wanted to teach my kids right. I believed in this. I believed this with every fiber of my being. And I never wanted to let my kids believe that there was anything that could take the place of this. When we went to church, it wasn't a religious activity. You know how you know it's a religious activity? It's once you leave church, nobody can tell that there's church in you. You leave church at church. The only time you're a Christian is at. And your kids go to church with you. And when you leave, your kids see your heathenism. And then one day you call him the pastor because you can't find your kid out there when he's 16, 17, or he's in jail. Because you didn't take church seriously. What do you think the kid's going to do? If you don't take it seriously, you think they are? Why do you think the enemy is so animate making the husband the man of the house? Why do you think he attacks him so much? Look across. I see some wonderful men in the house leading their families to church. But there's a lot of men that ain't. I can tell you on a Wednesday night, I got 30 head of women back there in the back. You know how many guys I teach on Wednesday? 3, maybe 4. Every now and then. We'll have a lot and we'll have 6. Tell you something. I don't care how good mama is. And kids are looking at daddy. If daddy ain't doing it, I ain't going to do it. Let's get back to this thing. Lost my train of thought again. You let Jesus lead you, guide you, direct you in every aspect of life. You'll look back and see Him sleeping. And you won't think, oh my gosh, He don't care. He don't know. You'll look back at a sleeping Jesus and you'll go, whew. He's still back there. Okay, He's asleep. He ain't worried about this storm, so I don't need to be worried about this storm. Man, what do we do? Okay, He's still asleep. We're good. He ain't going to die in it. He ain't going to drown in it. If He ain't going to drown, He certainly ain't going to let me drown in it. Whew, hi, we're good. You see, Jesus is the life vest in a believer's life where He controls the life. When you have an intimate personal relationship with Him, when you know Him intimately, you know Him, and you know that He's on your side. You see people who try to live the Christian life on their own, they've got no intimate relation. They really don't know Him. Is He for me or is He going to let me drown? Does He care about me or does He not? How many of us in the middle of our mess is crying out, where are you? Do you even care? I know ain't none of y'all ever done that or felt that way. Lord knows I have. That's because you don't know Him. You don't have the relationship. He's in the boat, but you don't know Him like you should. But those who know Him, those that follow Christ and not lead Christ. You see, there's a difference between anticipating, anticipating what Jesus is going to do and predicting what He'll do. Predicting means I believe he's going to go this way or that way. And then when he does it, you go, aha, I predicted it. Anticipating is when you anticipate that he's going to do something. You're anticipating them to go left or go right. And then you already go left or go right. And then when he doesn't go left and you went right, you're all messed up. You understand? Who? He's in the back of okay, he's asleep. If he's asleep, why am I awake? If he's at peace, why am I not at peace? He's at peace, I can be at peace. He's asleep. Man, why don't we just go back there and nudge him over and climb on the little bed he's made and go to sleep with him? You see, when Jesus is controlling your life, you know he's got your back. Me and my wife, we've had arguments. I know y'all don't believe me and my wife have ever had a disagreement, but we've had disagreements. I heard a comedian say one time that 90% of the arguments between a husband and wife are absolutely ridiculous. The other 10%, the cops are called. I've had the cops called. Anyway, we'll have a disagreement or a type of argument. And I've heard my wife, after we've gotten better and we've hugged it out and, I've said all the apologies, she will make a statement of, baby, I'm on your side. I'm in this with you. So evidently, because she says this, evidently inside the argument, I'll give her the impression that I think she's against me, that she's blaming me for something, or we're not on the same team. And she'll have to remind, we're in this together, baby. And then when you look at it, as soon as she says that, and I look at what we were arguing about, if I had known and realized that she's not against me, she's on we would have never had the argument. Anybody ever had that happen? Nobody? Anyway, so he's on my side. He ain't just in the boat. He's controlling the boat. He's controlling everything about my life. And Jesus loves me. He cares for me. He's on my side. He's working things out for me that I don't even know need to be worked out. He's there. And so when I look at Jesus in the back of my boat, he's controlling this thing. The words of Christ amplify in the spirit and the heart of those in the boat. Let's get over to the other side. Y'all remember when they set out? He said, let's go over to the other side. That's all they should have needed. Are you with me? That's all they should have ever needed was his word. Sometimes we just don't, his word ain't good enough for some of us. We want more. We want tangibility. When what he says should be good enough. What's in here, the promise, everything. Remember, this is absolute. You and I are going to obey this. Just like you can sit there and not believe in the laws of nature. I promise you, every one of us are going to obey the laws of nature. Case in point, I don't believe in gravity. I don't believe in the law of gravity. It doesn't exist. Go on up on the roof, take a jump, see what happens. You're going to obey that law. You're going to obey the law of Christ. So, let's move on. No man seeks after God. Now, that's troubling, ain't it? That God's the only one that can save me. God's the only one that can save your husband, save your wife. God has to do the work. They can't just go to church and say, I want to be saved. It doesn't happen that way. God's the one has to go and reveal himself to the loved one, to the son, the daughter, the family member, the coworker. Anybody who you desire to be saved or you think needs to be saved, God has to do, and then God has to reveal himself to them. God's the one that has to do the work. Kind of leaves you helpless, doesn't it? This is why it is absolutely emphatic. This is why the Bible says, pray without ceasing. Pray for those. Pray for them. The prayer meeting, the prayer life of a believer is everything to the salvation of lost. The effectual, fervent prayers of the righteous avail much. You want to see your husband saved? Pray. And then continue to pray. Spurgeon said, the answer to prayer is more prayer. I got one in this room right now who's amening me right now because a son emailed her or texted her and said, your prayers worked. And I promise you, he wasn't looking for God. The prayers of a mama, of a family, never stop praying, led him to a church where God encountered him and God brought him back. If you want to see the lost say we got to pray. You want to see husbands and wives and kids, got to pray. I heard a testimony on Facebook of a former witch. And this stuff is real, y'all. Witchcraft and demonic workings, and these witches were communicating with the demons, and they astro project, and demons, these witches got to where they can control certain demons and get the demons to do their bidding and all. And this testimony of this witch said that one of the first things they try to do is get to the kids when they're little. They start working on you when you was a baby. Some of us, it took a lot of work because the enemy was trying to kill you and defeat you from the womb. And they work on these kids, and they can get most of them. Before they ever enter elementary school, the demon has got them. And they're already on their way to being fully possessed by evil. So by the time they're adults, they're owned. They're owned by the demon. And there ain't nothing but Jesus going to get them out of. Only Jesus can deliver them from that possession. But it starts as young. And this witch was talking and sharing, and he said, yeah, when we're out, when we're working and we're going throughout the schools, the elementary schools and the preschools, or going into the homes of these kids, most of them, easy pickings. We started working on their little heads and throwing little things at them. And then they doing what we're telling them to do. Hey, the minute that they do what we tell them to do, that's one step in the door. He said, but there's certain kids we couldn't do anything about. He said they had a glow about them. There was a barrier around them. And we knew what that was. These kids got these Christians praying over them. These kids had parents that went to church. These kids had a relationship with Jesus Christ, and they prayed for these kids, and there ain't nothing we can do about them. They're protected. There's certain children that are protected from demonic stronghold simply because somebody's praying for them. If you're a parent and you ain't on your knees every night lifting your kids up to God, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. And don't go blaming God when your kids are being controlled by the enemy. When you should have been praying your guts out for them. Your kids, you ought to hear you every night or every morning praying for them. Praying for God's protection. from the time my kids were born, every time I open my mouth in prayer, Father, protect my babies, protect my kids from the evils of this world in every form that it comes. Because evil comes in all shapes and sizes and all forms. Lord, please protect them from evil. So far, He's done it. Ain't that something? Prayer works. You know how many times either one of my kids have been in the hospital? Except for the two babies? Never. If my daughter back there had never had kids, she'd never spent one night in a hospital, and she's 34 years old. My son has never spent one night in a hospital. Not one night. Praise God. I don't know why, outside of the grace of God, I've never spent one night in a hospital bed. Not once. Maybe because I got a great physician. When I went into ministry, when God called me, it took about 8 years for me to finally accept it, but when I finally accepted it, I walked away from a job that I had insurance. The best insurance on the planet. $20 a month. I had 100% emergencies. It paid 100% of any emergency. 80-20. Come on. And it was a $200 deductible for a single and $400 deductible for a family of 4. Best insurance ever. And when God told me I had to go and step out in faith and walk and preach, I had to walk away from that. And I had 2 babies. I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I went into my boss. I said, I got to quit. I got to follow God. He's called me to preach. I can't keep doing this. I gotta step out. I gotta do it. He told me I was stupid. Nobody does that. You at least gotta have something. You gotta have a job waiting on you. You gotta have insurance. What about your pension? What about all this stuff you gotta have? I said, I don't know. I know I gotta do this. And so I left. Cried all the way home. Scared. Cried all the way home. I get home. My wife is sitting in the house. I think it looked like she'd been crying because she worked. She had good insurance. She worked for the court system. And she said, we need to talk. I said, yeah, we do need to talk. So it's one of them, you first. No, you first. I said, well, I just quit my job. I believe God's called us to be in gospel ministry. She said, well, He just told me to quit mine. So me and my wife are sitting in my living room without a job. Neither one of us had a job. Got 2 babies to support. Don't know when our next paycheck's coming. I just want you to think about that. Think about not knowing not having a paycheck next Friday. Not knowing what you're going to do. What's going to happen. I didn't have a job. I didn't have a church. I didn't have anything. We had nothing. And we believed God called us into ministry. We didn't have it wasn't seemed like forever, but it wasn't but a few weeks. We were moved to Jessup, Georgia, and I was a full-time children's pastor. It was just, I saw more miracles than I'd ever seen in my life. I saw Him do things. I was telling Richard last week, I had a bad toothache. That thing was throbbing. Anybody ever had a bad toothache? Come on, somebody say amen. This thing was killing me. One Wednesday night, after church, we all gathered up, a bunch of us gathered up at a local, I think it was a Dairy Queen. I wasn't eating anything because it was hurting really bad. I ain't got no insurance. I can't go to a dentist. I got no way of paying. Lord knows preachers don't make a lot of money. some people, anyway. And this a friend of ours, she wasn't big demonstrative. She didn't go to speaking in tongues and prophesy. She didn't do that. She just leaned over and touched my mouth. I didn't hear a prayer, nothing. She just leaned over. I knew she had to have been praying, but I didn't hear anything. She just leaned over and touched whichever side the toothache was on. And stopped. And everybody went back to eating and talking and everything. I woke up the next day without a toothache. And that sucker never did bother me again until it fell out. You stand up for God, He stands up for you. You know that they're having ball practices for these teen kids? You know they're having ball practices? They've been doing it on Wednesday nights. So people who have these kids, they don't come to church on Wednesday nights because of ball. But now they're doing it on Sunday mornings. And tell me that ain't demonic. You tell me that ain't demonic. When they got 6 days where they can have games and practices, that they got to have it on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock? Tell me that ain't. Nah. I started this story, didn't I? Anyway. My buddy asked me to help him coach my son's little league. It was the T-ball. The older than the T-ball is the coach pitch. Anyway. I told him, I said, I'll help you, Craig. I'll help you. I said, but Wednesdays and Sundays, me and my kid's going to be in church. I'm not going to teach my kid that there's a time when you can put God second. I said, you're not going to have a coach on Wednesday and Sunday. And he went to the same church I did. He said, man, I get it. I understand completely. I said, no, I'm going to make it say, I don't care if it's the World Series, the World Championship. If you have it on Wednesday night or Sunday, me and him won't be there. He said, well, y'all not that important anyway. No, he didn't say that. Guess what? We actually played in the championship game. And it was on a Saturday. Not one practice. Nothing. Not one game. Now you have to play the games according to who. It wasn't just up to you and your coach. It was up to the rec department. You understand what I mean? The rec department schedules all games, practices, everything. And they didn't schedule one of our games or one of our practices on church night, church morning. You stand up for God. You'll stand up for God at your job. You won't have to work on Sundays. You won't have to work on Wednesdays. Anyway, we got to pray for the lost. We got to pray for the lost. That's how they get saved. You pray and keep praying. And then the last one, we learned that they went to the back of the boat. You see, these guys sought Jesus. They sought Him. And they got their prayer answered. But you got to understand something. They wasn't seeking Him for salvation. They wasn't seeking Him for the relationship. They were seeking Him for what they could get out of Him. They went and sought Him for what they needed Him to do. You know how many churches are filled with people who love the teachings of Christ, especially women. Every woman on the planet ought to be a Christian because they became valid when Jesus came on the scene. Women were second-rate citizens. Some of them were, most of the time, women were not even considered, they were nothing more than property. Y'all couldn't get divorced. You didn't have any rights at all. You were property of your husband until Jesus come along and gave you worth, made you valid, made you as important as your husband. Children, He gave children validity. They wasn't no better than a slave until Jesus come along. And Jesus gave women and children validation, made them worth something. But there are churches full today of people who agree with the teaching. They like the teachings. They love his morality. They love that they just agree with the teachings. And they believe, I could be saved. I like this. I'm gonna try to stay with this. I believe people will treat me better. I mean, no, that ain't gonna happen eventually. But anyway, but they don't want Jesus for him. They want what he can give them. They want what they can get. They like Jesus for what they can get from him, not wanting him. And we got to take an account. Do you love Jesus because you love Jesus, or do you just like what he gives you? Because when he don't give you what you want, you know how many people have walked away from Christ because he didn't answer the prayer that they prayed? They get mad at him when he don't answer the prayer that they prayed. That means you wasn't in it for the right reasons. Anyway, all right. I'm closing. I'm sorry. These guys went from being afraid to being fearful. Two different words in the Greek. One meant timid, afraid, scared. They didn't like what was happening. It just caused a lot of confusion. And when he got up and he rebuked the winds and he spoke to the sea, he rebuked the circumstance and calmed the environment down to where they were used to having it. He did that. Then they stepped back. And they went from being afraid of the environment and afraid of the circumstances to being in awe, in amazement, in reverent obedience is the word that they used for how they felt about Jesus. After he showed them there's nothing that I don't have control over. Not only do I control your boat, it's full of water and it ain't sinking. Not only do I control your life, but I control the environments that you go into. Even asleep, I control them. When you've got a revelation and you've got an encounter with Jesus in such a way where you see the fact that he controls all things, nothing is outside of his control, there's a fear that happens. There's a reverence that happens. There's an obedience that takes place. You go from being scared to the Israelites, the Hebrew people in the desert. They were afraid of God. Matter of fact, when he started speaking from the mountain, they ran from him and said, "No, Moses, you go up and talk. We don't want to hear him no more. You go up." And even to this day, the Jewish people will not say his name because they're afraid. But Moses had what they called, these guys on that boat had what you call a theophany. Moses had a theophany. Abraham had a theophany. You're going to learn. Samuel had a theophany. David had a theophany. And that is a tangible, present encounter with God. They had an intimate encounter, an experience in the natural with the living God. Moses had his theophany on the mountain, Sinai, talking to a burning bush. He literally was looking at a miracle, and the voice of God came out of that bush. It wasn't burning. Wasn't being consumed by the fire. A theophany. The Hebrew people hadn't had one. And they cried and cried and cried and cried. We needed to be delivered from this Egyptian bondage. They were tortured and tormented and starving. It was awful for them. Moses was raised in the palace. His daddy was the most powerful guy in the world. He had everything he ever wanted at his fingertips. When they were delivered out into the desert, what did they want to do? They wanted to go back to Egypt into slavery. Not one time did Moses ever want to go back to glory. Did he want to go back to the pleasures of the palace? He didn't want to go back. Why? Because he'd had an encounter with God. God, in his simplest form, is 100 times better than the best that this world could possibly offer you. That's what happened to Moses. He was in the presence of the Creator and Sustainer of all life. He was in the presence of the one that created him. His owner, his master, his creator. He was in the tangible presence of him. And it changed him. No longer the world and nothing in the world was pleasing to him. Nothing. It paled. It was garbage. It was nothing to him. Nothing that he experienced in the natural come close to what he experienced on that mountain. That's what happened to these guys. When Jesus got up, Jesus was the prophet, the Messiah, Savior, did miracles. But apparently miracles was not something that was uncommon back then. These Jewish people grew up with prophets like Elijah and hearing all those miracles that these prophets did. And my Lord, these guys were doing miracles. Jesus gave them the power. But there was something about what happened on that boat that day. They had a theophany. They had an encounter with the living God. And it changed them forever. I think that's one of the problems today, is that we need to be in the tangible presence of God. Otherwise, the temptations of this world will always be there. I'll tell you, when I had an encounter with God, when I had the theophany, nothing this world had. Matter of fact, I had the world in my pocket. All I wanted to do was get rid of it. It had no appeal to me. The things that I found pleasure in, I had no desire to do anymore. Nothing. Because there wasn't nothing this world had could even touch the power that the love of God had. Anyway, well, I'm going to close with this. The enemy is not going to do anything. These guys left the shore, was headed to the other side. If that wind had started up as soon as they got on the boat, they'd have just backed up. Let's wait a while, let this thing die back down. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. Let's just wait till the wind dies down. No. It didn't wait till they were almost to the other side before it started. Because then I go, hey, we just got a tiny bit further. We just got a little bit further. Let's just press on, guys. We can do this. We can do this. No. That did about 12 miles, 6 hours there was about 3.5 hours of rowing now. They're halfway between where they were and where they wanted to be. They wasn't on the shore, but they wasn't where they wanted to be. The desired destination where they were, everything was about getting to that location, getting to that place. I pray and I hope that most of us believers, that our destination is glory. That our destination that this boat is on is to get to heaven. And to get to where God desires us to go. But these guys are in this boat, and they've been rowing out for about 3.5 hours. They're tired. They're thirsty. They still got a long way to go to get to where they want to be. And then they look back. Oh, God, look how far. We can't go back. Look how far we got to go. Now, you can have that attitude. This is why the enemy does that. He waits till you are halfway between nowhere. Because now, he can cause that wind to come up, and he can cause you, look, God, look how far we've rowed. Well, he can't go back. Oh, but look how far we've got to go. That's impossible. There's no way. Look at the energy. Look at the time. Look at all the stuff we've had to go through just to get here. How in the world am I going to make it there? How am I going to get there? This is where people give up. This is where people give up. There's no... How many's looked at a promise of God and thought that's so far out of reach? It's just not possible. This is where faith gets shattered. This is where we lose faith. It's because we've been battered and torn for so long, rowing for so long, living this life for so long. The enemy's been beating me up for all this time. And I'm believing God for this. I'm believing God for this promise, for this miracle, for this salvation or this healing or whatever the promise is, whatever it is, the destination for you. And it seems like it's always out of reach. And that's most Christians, most believers. In their faith, they fall short. There's no way I'll get there. Look how far it took too much energy to get where I'm at. And that's an impossibility. Maybe I can settle. Because it ain't but a couple of miles over here to nowhere. At least I'll be comfortable over here. Come on, somebody. You know, people say, we love our freedom, our freedom, our freedom. No, we like being comfortable. Especially in the United States. We don't care about actually being free. Because free people are out there in Africa trying to make it, looking for food every day. They ain't got nothing to eat. They ain't got nothing to drink. They ain't got nothing to wear. And they're having to survive every day. All those thousands of years ago, the cave people, they were free. We ain't free. We're bound by air conditioning and a heater in the winter. We're bound by the grocery store. We're bound, matter of fact, most of it, except for you Army guys. That's what I loved about my father-in-law. He could go anywhere, live anywhere on the planet. His paycheck followed him. Me? My paycheck's here, so I can't go too far away from right here. I'm a slave to my paycheck, which is most of us. We're not free. We're not even close to being free. We're slaves because we want to be comfortable. Now, if Jesus is not only in the boat, but if Jesus is leading, guiding, controlling, Jesus is the one that got me this far. Oh, I might be in the middle of this thing. I'm not in the barn, but I ain't in the big house yet. I ain't where I want to be, but by God, I'm not where I used to be. This is what happens when a born-again believer is led by the Spirit and filled with the Spirit and got God always on his mind and knowing that I didn't get here on my own. I'm not here because of my ability. I'm not here because of my thought, my smarts. I'm here because of him. And if he got me this far, he's going to get me the rest of the way. Matter of fact, this wasn't that big a deal to begin with because the whole way I felt him. You see, when you're doing it, the wind's always going to be against you. When Jesus is rowing the boat and Jesus is controlling the boat, the wind's always a little bit. If he got me this far, he's going to get me that far. The only reason that I look backwards is to remind myself where I'm not. You don't look at the past and go, man, wish I was back there. Or, Look at what it's done to me. I don't want to go. If I got to go through that again, because you know the same things in front of them as what's in back of them. How many has had that thought in their head? How many has had that feeling? I don't want to go through that. It was too hard to go through that. I don't want to go through that. How many has been poor? Dirt poor. Looking in the fridge and only seeing mustard and ketchup on the side thing. Nothing on the counters. Nothing. That's the life of a preacher. I remember I worked at the daggum, this apartment complex. It was HUD, the government place where they give them money and they give them all the food stuff. I'm maintenance guy. Somebody called me one night at 1 o'clock in the morning. I got a 13-inch TV at my house. It was barely color. And it was one of them heavy ones. It wasn't a flat one. It was a heavy sucker. Y'all grew up with them. It was almost the one with the antenna. Nothing in my fridge. Hardly nothing in my fridge. I made about $600 a month. We were poor. I go to this apartment complex to unclog a toilet. I walk into their apartment. And I work there during the day, so I know the people and I know what's in their fridge. Their freezers would go out because they packed it so full of food that doesn't able to breathe. Bottom is full of food. Cabinets full of food. I walk in. There's grown men sitting on the couch. I thought they was on a 75-inch flat screen TV. I thought they was watching a basketball game. That's how alive it looked. I go back to the bathroom, 2 toilets. They called me to come unplug one. When I get into the bathroom, there's a plunger sitting right there. I pick up the plunger, flush the toilet. Took me 2 minutes. I walk back out, and when I'm walking back out, I look across. They got these headsets on. They're playing a video game. It's video basketball. I get to go home to no food, a 13-inch TV, not making any money. And they don't do anything all day long but play video games. Why did I tell y'all that? I don't know. Take that. What we talking about? Anyway, stand with me. I'm done. I apologize. I felt like I was all over the place. I'm trying to do better. Trying to communicate better. Trying not to sound so hicky and rednecky. Did I do a good job, or I'm still rednecky? And I'm trying to communicate without using the ums and the ahs and the How did I do? Liars. Anyway, but I love you anyway. It's all about Jesus. Let him live through you. Stop trying to live for him. You didn't get here on your own. You're not where you are. He's the one who's brought you right to where you are, even to the seat you're sitting in. Jesus has done that. He's protected you where you needed protection. He's allowed you to get sick where you needed to be sick. Because sometimes we won't stop. Some of us won't stop until we're sat down. And when Jesus is always present, there's just something about knowing that he's there, he's on my side, and he's in the boat with me. What lies ahead of me I'll be filled with hope. Come on. I will have peace and expectation. Look at what he's done. I can't imagine what he's gonna do. That's the attitude that he wants every believer to have as you go through every environment and every circumstance that shakes it up. He wants you to be able to look in the back of the boat and see him at peace and see him in control. I promise you, it'll change your life. Father, I love you. Thank you for your word. Thank you for everybody that's here. I pray, God, that this word, I pray that everyone in this room has an absolute tangible encounter with you as those disciples had on that boat, where they see you and see that you are in control of the circumstances of life, that you're in control of the environments, and you're in control of our life. And let it change us so that we can let you live through us. In Jesus' name, amen. Hug somebody. Love on. Tell them you look good today.